The president is vowing to stop these social media companies, and they've been high flyers. Listen.
Look at social media. It's a thing called free speech rights. You look at Google, Facebook, Twitter, and other social media giants, and I've made it clear that we as a country cannot tolerate political censorship, blacklisting, and rigged search results. And you know, it can go the other way also.
So what was he saying there? That if they won't police themselves, I will? Let's go to Axios technology reporter David McCabe. He always leaves it kind of out there as a veiled threat. But what is he saying, David?
Well, thank you so much for having me. And, of course, the president has been making these claims all week. He's ramped it up throughout the week, even though, no reporting has really shown that there was some intentional effort to build these systems to silence conservatives. He's continued to make these claims. He's, of course, echoing claims that have been popular with the base for a long time. He has not gotten specific in terms of what the White House could do. At one point he said, we don't want regulation, we want fairness. But just yesterday he called it a very antitrust situation. So he's been fairly vague. There are things that Congress could do to regulate these companies. There are things the Justice Department could do, but it's hard for the White House to get involved directly.
He always feels that the media is slighted against him. I would say when it comes to the mainstream media that veers left, I don't think I'm making any Fox News alert comment there. He is right. Is that the fault of social media that culls through that, or a Google search that will cull through that and you get those results? And then if that is the case, do you punish them because they're culling through sources that are biased?
Well, this question of algorithmic bias is very complicated. Right. Algorithmic ranking is really complicated. And I think what you're getting at is that this is a question with a lot of different inputs. It's not just as simple as, well, we rank it by one factor. It's a lot of different factors. And that's made, I think, it really hard for these companies to explain how they work. And they've done themselves no favors by not being particularly transparent about how this works either.
So I'm wondering what the answer is. I mean, bias is always in the, I'm the beholder. I've mentioned many times on this show because I like, the history of presidencies and all. John Kennedy was one of the most fawned over presidents when he was alive by the press, still bemoaned press coverage of himself. So that goes back a long way. President's not satisfied with the way the press is covering them. Then comes the inevitable question, what's the next leap if you don't like it? Some presidents accept it, others won't. And this president is convinced that he won't tolerate it. So what is he hinting at?
Well, I think these are two separate questions, sort of his attacks on the press and then his attacks on tech. But there is this through line, which is sort of an attempt to discredit these platforms, whether they're a news organization or a social media platform. And I think so we're seeing him draw from the same playbook in a lot of ways that he's used to attack the press in terms of attacking tech.
But if you think about it, ironically, these same social medias going after were the ones that galvanized some of these conservative sites that oftentimes made a lot of outlandish claims that you could argue propelled interest in him and drew serious questions about the other side. Now, it clearly works both ways. But the irony here is that it was on that side that abuses were taken and social media didn't police enough.
Yeah, there's no doubt that social media has been really good for Donald Trump and for his political ascendance. I mean, we all know how he uses Twitter. And in fact, he talked to some of my colleagues at Axios when he first came into office and sort of hinted at this idea that, well, I have a pretty good audience on these platforms. And in fact, we know that these attacks, like the one the president is pursuing now, that members of Congress on the Republican side have been pursuing for a long time, have actually influenced the way, in some cases, these platforms look at these issues. We know, because there's been reporting on this, that Facebook, for example, after they were hit over the trending topic section on their site and accused of bias by conservatives, they had all these conservatives to their headquarters in Menlo Park. And we know that they were then kind of hesitant to police some of the wilder claims on the right. And some people have argued that led to some of the hoax news problems. But what we know for sure is that these attacks can have a real impact on the way these platforms look at these issues.
Yeah, maybe he's just urging all police what you do. Be aware of it. And if it can be left at that, maybe it's good. We shall see. Thank you very much for taking the time.
Thank you for having me.